Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome to PyData New York City. Thank you all for coming up early on a Wednesday, weekday morning to take this glorious tutorial, building your first multimodal Gen AI app with Hugo Bowne-Anderson. Hugo is an independent data and AI consultant with extensive experience in the tech industry. His teaching experience spans from institutions like Yale University and Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, conferences such as SciPy, PyCon, and ODSC. He has also worked with organizations like Data Carpentry to promote data literacy. The structure of this tutorial is that it is an hour and a half with a 20-minute break afterwards. As for questions, Hugo said that he is welcome to interaction, questions asked throughout, so feel free to have that back and forth like we just saw now. And that is it. Hugo, take it away.
Thank you so much, Mars. As Mars said, I'm Hugo Bowne-Anderson. I'm a freelance data and AI scientist. Work a lot in education. I introduced him earlier, but I'd like to introduce I'm very honored to have Michael Chow here as TA, who's an old friend. Maybe you could say a few words, Michael, again about who you are.
Yeah. Hey, happy to be here. I'm a software engineer at Posit, where we're going open source tools for data analysis. And I'm a giant fan of Hugo's, and I feel like I've learned a ton just chatting about the workshop. So really excited to be here.
That's cool. Thanks so much, Mike. I'd also like to thank Mars and PyData NYC for having me here today. The PyData community is one of the reasons I got into a lot of the open source stuff and education stuff I work on. I felt very much at home in this community for many years, and I'm super grateful that they accepted this proposal and having me here today. Also, thank you all for coming out today. I think it's a challenging week to have a conference, to be honest, and coming out on a morning like this to a place as intense as Times Square in New York City after the past 24 hours. I just want to say I really appreciate all of you being here as well. So let me first say, I don't want you to do anything yet. I just want to give, there's one more personal plug I want to do. Mars mentioned that I do data science, machine learning, AI podcasting. That's true. I wouldn't normally do this, but this is going to be shameless self-promotion. I did launch a new podcast recently with my friends at a company called Delphina. The reason I'm sharing this, you can search it, High Signal Podcast, Hugo, Delphina, whatever. I got to interview an absolute hero of mine, Michael Jordan. Not the basketballer, the Michael Jordan of machine learning, both literally and figuratively. And I've been wanting to speak with him for many years, and it's actually I feel it's one of the most wonderful conversations I've had. I want more people to listen to it, so please do check it out if these types of things interest you. And he really has a big, expansive view of what AI is capable of, and where we're misleading ourselves and fooling ourselves, and where we can do better as well.
Was Andrew Gelman one of the people that
Yeah. Exactly. So I've actually done several podcasts with Andy, but the second episode, and this is, he's just fantastic. So it's an episode on just how to fool yourself less, using a bit of statistical thinking in data science and these types of things. So it's a lot of fun. Pardon me, I'm not contagious. I had a flu a couple of weeks ago and coughs linger. I was in Germany when I got the flu in Berlin, and they call it die Grippe, which is the grip, which I think is a wonderful term for at least what I had. Okay, so without further ado, what I first want to do is actually just show you kind of what we'll be building today, the types of things we'll be thinking about. So as I mentioned, if you go to this GitHub repository, which is bit.ly/PyData-Gen AI, and I probably should write that up. You'll get to the GitHub repository, and so what I did was I created my own code space. You can create one similar here. They give them funny names, such as friendly space goggles. And what I'm going to do, what I'm just going to do is give a very brief demo of what what your app, what the app we're going to build will look like, and then we'll kind of start jumping into the reasons behind these things and jumping into the weeds. So this should take a second or two. What you'll see here, so can you put up your hand again if you've had experience with Colab or something along those lines? So Colab is a Google type notebook that essentially someone like me could put all the packages you need for a workshop like this in a Colab notebook, and then you can run the stuff in the notebook without doing any local installation. This does something very similar, a GitHub Codespace, but it allows us kind of access to what looks like Visual Studio Code, VS Code essentially. So you don't only have a notebook, you have your local file system, you have a terminal, have all of these types of things. And I think with the type of stuff we'll be doing a lot in a notebook, but we'll be building an app as well. And I, for one, don't build applications in notebooks. I know some people who do. I'm not going to get into a conversation of whether they're the best for that. But when I'm in here, so to get into my environment, it's kind of like Conda or Mamba or these types of things. I'm going to poetry shell, which will get me into get all the packages. Oof. Ideally. Great, and then so you don't have to be coding along now, just for context once again, but I just want to show you where we're going with this. And so it's going to be a Streamlit app, which is a nice way of building shippable applications using Python. And the code space spins it up and allows me to open it in the browser, okay? And actually, you won't be able to do this because we haven't gotten you all your API keys and that type of stuff yet. But once again, this is to show you what we'll be building. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna speak into my laptop and then it's gonna start putting that into different AI models. So, hey Mike, do you want to give me a sentence to say into my laptop? Not political.
Right. Okay, then I gotta think about it.
Yeah.
A room of donuts gathers around a fire hydrant speaker at PyData.
Amazing, I love it. A room of donuts gathers around a fire hydrant speaker at PyData. Okay, so that should have recorded that. Let's see. A room of donuts gathers around a fire hydrant speaker at PyData. Okay, that's cool. So now I'm going to transcribe that. And what I'm going to do as well is I've given this system prompt, and we'll get into what that is, but we've got an LLM that turns this into a song as well. And we can see the song it created was, oh, I'm just going to run all these tasks. Oh, sweet assembled pastries, listen up tonight. Gather around the hydrant where the speaker shines so bright. At PyData, the donuts gather, all shapes and sizes too. Rise to the bite, they chant, as info flows like icing new. Okay? We've got a nice little poem. And what I'm doing here is converting, using a whole bunch of models that we'll go through in the back end to convert this into audio, into images, into movies. And what we'll see here is that we're currently generating an image, generating video, generating audio. That may take a minute, so while we're waiting for that to run, what I want to do is just get a sense for who's in the room. So who works in a data science or data analyst-y type position at the moment? Very cool, so around 30-40%. Who works with machine learning models at work? Great, so we've got maybe 30% as well. Who works with generative AI stuff? Okay, cool, we've got some as well. Who has used vendor APIs? Okay, great, so we've got around 50% as well. It's a lovely distribution. So let's have a look at what we've done now. So there are a whole bunch of choices that you can make, I can make with respect to the models we use, the image model, but we can see we've got the fire hydrant with donuts around it. We can see we've got a very short film created, which isn't great, but it's a proof of concept. we can see with respect to we turn the AI song into an image and a movie as well. So we have those. And let's listen to the audio it created as well. So you'll recall that I spoke into it, and now what we're doing is text to speech. So converting that text back to speech.
A room of donuts gathers around a fire hydrant speaker at PyData.
Okay, great. And then we'll convert this song.
Oh, sweet assembled pastries. Listen up tonight. Gather round the hydrant where the speaker shines so bright at PyData. The donuts gather, all shapes and sizes too. Tie, rise to the bite. They chant as info flows like icing new.
Fantastic. Okay, so this is the type of thing we'll be building. And the basic premise is that given kind of the opened up world and space of all these models, that we're able to quickly prototype and connect models together and build applications such as this. So what I want to do now is jump into the notebook. So you'll see there's a directory called notebooks, and there's a notebook called models everywhere. If you're having any issues with running this stuff, just put your hand up and Mike we'll come and say g'day, as we say. What do I want to say? So essentially, we've called this workshop Building Your First Multimodal Gen AI. And as we've seen, we've been working with text and images and music and those types of things. But we could have called this workshop Building Composable AI Systems. And the reason I think that's so important to recognize is that the app I just showed you has maybe 6 or 7 different models running in parallel. We've got my speech to text, text to text, text to image, text to audio, text to video, and these types of things. So we are in a space again where we do want to start taking state-of-the-art models and connecting them together, okay? Why use code interfaces over pre-built tools is a really important question, I think, and something that Mike actually got me to answer last week and include here. I do think at the moment, the real answer is it's the power of modularity, customization, automation, and scalability. So the fact that a new model came out last week, that may not be productized yet, but the fact that I can plug and play it into this type of application means we still want to be writing code. If we want to use certain state-of-the-art models, such as those in ChatGPT, maybe you don't need to write code at all. Maybe you just use ChatGPT, and I'll give a demo of that in a second. But what type of scenarios would you even want to do something like this? And I do think one of the big powers of these models is for iteration and ideation. So if you want to do rapid image generation and copy generation for a marketing team, for example, you may want to prompt a language model to come up with a bunch of image descriptions, then use those descriptions to actually generate the models, then filter and select the best images based on criteria. And then maybe you have an API or an application which sends the top images, integrates with Slack, sends them to people or something along those lines. So we're composing a lot of different models together there. There are lots of other different scenarios this would be useful. I've laid them down here. I'd be happy to chat about them at any point. I don't necessarily want to go through all of them right now. But what do I want to say? What we're going to learn about is how to compose models to build custom applications, how to automate these types of workflows, how to experiment with different models, and then how to deploy to build a basic app, which uses such models to build systems and applications, not just models. Okay. So as I mentioned, these types of things are already available. So in products. So does anyone use the ChatGPT desktop app by any chance? Well, check this out. I find this incredibly useful. Mike, can you give me another image? Oh, actually, no, I got this. Hey, ChatGPT, give me a marketing campaign for a product that inserts surveillance-esque advertisements into people's dreams and give me images for the advertising campaign as well. So I watched the movie Dream Scenario recently, and that's a product in that movie. I don't know if anyone's seen that movie, but it's wonderful. So look, what we have here is, this is so dystopic, I'm sorry. We don't have enough dystopia this week, do we? So transform imagination into awareness. That's beautiful, isn't it? It's almost like non-dualist. So unmatched reach, engage your audience where no one else can inside their dreams. Create experiences that feel like stories, not ads, blah, 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 blah. And we have a beautiful image, and it meets our DEI quotas as well, that we can use to market to the world. Now, the reason the content itself aside, this is, I think, actually incredible that I can use a desktop app that I, command spacebar, suddenly I'm talking to software in natural language that's generating copy for me, that's generating images, right? So this is a multimodal application. So the question is, why don't we just use stuff like this, right? And why are we even writing code to build more things? And the answer is, once again, we can go to the DAO of Winnie the Pooh and recognize that what I've just done in using ChatGPT uses Whisper, the model for speech to text. It uses GPT 4.0 for text to text, and it uses DALL-E 3 for text to image, okay? And these are cool. I mean, Pooh Bear's relative, he's like chill, he's like, that's fine. But let's say I wanted to use slightly different models, like an incredibly fast version of Whisper, or I wanted to self-host Llama 3.1 or something like that, which is one of the language models that's come out of Meta, and then use something like Stable Diffusion for image generation. See, now we're getting cooler, okay? So this is, Pooh Bear's put on his tux, he's like, this is chill. What's even better than that is the ability to have a seriously modular system where we can have any of these speech transcription models be used, use any language model, and then use any image generation model and pipe them together. And just to prove this point, I changed part of this tutorial, this workshop yesterday. What we'll see is that this section is called Suno Bark, which is a text to audio model, and it was slow. It's been slow for the past week, and I've got theories for why, but I was like, I don't want to take a model that takes 4 minutes to generate audio to a PyData workshop. So I pinged a friend of mine at Replica, and they said, try out F5. And I was able to just switch this model in. It's a lot faster, and I was able to do that. So I think that's an obvious proof of principle why we want to start doing these types of things. So let's now, I've said all this in a variety of ways, but we want to be able to take state-of-the-art models and stitch them together to build some form of software, right? And to that point now, composability is incredibly important. So we get to combine different AI models, tools, and components that are reusable, that are modular, that are easily integrated with each other, and to build more powerful and complex systems. So Andre Karpathy, who if you don't know who he is a deep learning guru, an amazing educator. I would actually encourage everyone to watch his YouTube videos. He ran ML and vision at Tesla, and then was at OpenAI. But the content he puts out is some of the most wonderful stuff I've ever seen. But he tweeted out a while ago that he was playing around with, pardon me, with generative AI tools, stitching them together into visual stories. And so he actually took the first few sentences of Pride and Prejudice and made it into a video. Let me just, we should be able to play that in here soon. But what he had to do, he had to use Anthropic's Claude to, let me do this while doing that, to take the first chapter, generate the scenes. Then he had to use another app to take the prompts, generate the images, then something else to take the images and animate them, then something else for narration, and something else to stitch them together. And he's like, we should have products. there's a huge storytelling opportunity here, and I totally agree with that. Once again, any product like that will have a set of models it can use, and those that it can't. So this is just another proof of principle that this type of composability is actually incredibly important these days, particularly where we are. And this isn't new. This essentially is the Unix philosophy in a new light, right? Where we have simple modular programs, each of them do one thing well, and they're easily combined. So, for example, here's something command line where, we take the lines of a file and we look for a pattern, we sort them and print out the unique ones. So we've got cat, grep, sort, and unique, and we're piping them to each other. So it's not really doing much different to that. I mean, the implementation details and the models we're using are different, but not necessarily the philosophy behind it. I do want to say there is a counterpoint. We're talking about like combining and stitching together best of breed solutions. There is a counterpoint, like the all-in-one platforms and this type of stuff. I think probably best illustrated by Apple, which has always had tightly integrated solutions. Don't be a hacker, everything's in one. The UX is wonderful, it's simple, not necessarily modular, not necessarily customizable. I'm not making any judgment based on which is a better model. We can. I do make that judgment, and we can talk about that after the workshop. I will say the Apple kernel is based around Unix as well, so they took something open source and commercialize it. Having said that, Apple makes wonderful products designed in California. I do want to just step back a bit and think about what we're doing. And I think this is it is an amazing time. We don't recognize enough. A decade ago, when we were all doing machine learning, and data science, there was a lot of our work still is like data munging and cleaning and that type of stuff. But there was a lot of feature engineering that needed to take place. Then with the advent of deep learning and essentially representation learning in neural networks, it moved more to thinking about what is our objective function. What are we trying to optimize for here? And now with the advent of generative AI, you don't need to necessarily think about objective functions. You can train your own models, don't get me wrong. It's a wonderful thing to do, and fine-tuning your own models and this type of stuff. But we actually have a lot of models that are already trained, usable, and we get to compose them now. So I think the abstraction layer here is actually quite wonderful, and it does open up the world of like data-powered software to a lot of different people, including classical software engineers. And a lot of mine and Mike's background is teaching scientists how to build better software. And I'm really excited about now teaching software people about how to think about science and data-powered software. The other thing, as we just saw, I don't think, in all this, there's a lot of hype and all of that. The fact that we can now communicate with computers in natural language and speech as well, in this way, I think is absolutely incredible. So it's a really exciting space. So I've already really talked about the importance of composability ad nauseum even. The one other thing I do want to say is that the advantage, pardon me, we also get is what I call the explorer's advantage. We get to go to places like Replicate. And as I said, for those of you who weren't here just before the session, like on Saturday morning, I'll have my morning coffee, and instead of opening the newspaper, because that's depressing, I will open my dashboard on Replicate and check out what new models are around and play around with them. And we get to generate images, restore images, caption images. There are all types of stuff. Generate speech, and that's something we'll be doing today. So I think that's probably, let me have a think about, I do want to say one other thing, which is that I've just been talking about, why it's very useful to think about composability in these terms from a personal level and software building level. Does it impact our work? And the truth is it really, really does. So this is, I used to work I ran DevRel and marketing at a company called Out of Bounds, where we still work with them. We essentially productized Metaflow, which was an open source framework for full stack machine learning that my former colleagues built and open sourced at Netflix when they ran ML infrastructure there. Big fan of Metaflow. And this is a blog post we wrote about our kind of thoughts on the generative AI space. And as you'll see here, let's say we're building a product that we need personalized recommendations, and we may need images for it and that type of stuff. We may have an open source foundation model, such as one from the Llama family, which we've already briefly looked at. We may be fine-tuning it and generating embeddings for personalized recommendations. We may be fine-tuning to have a customer service chatbot as well. We may want to generate images for product recommendations as well, so we may have an AI vendor that we're also using in addition to our self-hosted open source foundation model. So both of these are outside our governance boundary in a variety of ways. The open source foundation model we may have more insight into in terms of the weights. We may not know what the training data is as opposed to a model that we trained ourselves. AI vendor APIs, I mean, who knows, right? There's a whole gamut of different types of models we can find there. But so a pattern I've seen is that people will start off, especially with conversational interfaces, using something like OpenAI's APIs, and then after some time, they'll start fine-tuning self-hosted, privacy-preserving open weight LLMs, such as those from the Llama family, and fine-tune them on a lot of the historical data, conversations they've had, and then use those models. And the reason that's so relevant here is essentially that speaks to the modularity and composability once again. Pardon me. So the ability to take an AI vendor API and then switch it out when your business needs require it for another type of model, such as a self-hosted open weight model, is incredibly important. That can happen for several reasons. The one I've seen the most is, like, you build an MVP product using OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever it is, and it seems relatively cheap in terms of like tokens, but then as you scale it and get more users and start having more conversations, the costs can blow out pretty significantly. So that latency concerns, cost, yeah, time, money, and then data privacy are the three reasons, main reasons we see people move to self-hosted models. But that speaks as to why this is so important as well. So it isn't just fun and cool, it's helps pay our wages also. So without further ado, why don't we jump in? I'm going to get everyone to create a Groq account. Has anyone played around with Groq? So Groq is super fast cloud-hosted models, among other things. And the reason I've chosen this, if you go to groq.com, or click on it in the notebook, you'll go there. So one of the reasons I've chosen Groq, not only because they're super fast models, but check this out. I'm going to go to limits. And what we see here is that Groq allows me and you now, it has a free tier to all of these models. So we've got chat completion models, we've got the Gemma models from Google, we've got Llama, we've got Mistral from Mistral, we have a multimodal model, Lava, and then we have a whole bunch of, pardon me, speech to text as well. I don't know if you all have, so we get access to these totally for free now, which I think is great for this type of workshop. And I am somewhat surprised that OpenAI and Anthropic don't have a free tier. That doesn't say they won't in future, but that's why we're using Groq today. Now, right, so let me get this right. What you're going to do is set up your account, and you can probably like OAuth in or something like that, I'm pretty sure. And then you're going to create an API key. PyData, NYC. And then you're going to copy that. Actually, you're not going to copy it yet. The order of operations here. And then the other thing we're going to do is get a replicate. Right, so if you go to bit.ly/PyData-replicate or scan this QR code, what you should see is welcome to replicate. You've been given $100 in credit to run and fine tune models. But you may need to log in because I'm already logged in. I'm not quite. Can you tell me what the flow's like, Mike, actually?
Wait, sorry, could you say again how do I get to replicate?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'll actually write it up as well. It's bit.ly/PyData-replicate. So
and then I'm seeing similar, so I'm just seeing signing with GitHub, so.
oh, great, fantastic. So if everyone can take a couple of minutes to do that, I'm going to accept another credit. I've already accepted the invite. Cheeky buggers. Okay. I was the cheeky one there, trying to get it twice actually. And once you're in Replicate, you'll click on your username in the top left and go to API tokens, and then so yeah, we'll just take a few minutes to do all of that.
The API tokens, we put them in a .env file
So we will when we do the app. We're actually going to put them directly into our notebook in a slightly cheeky way as well, which is good for a workshop. I wouldn't suggest you do it when doing things in production. So yeah, for those who actually have the API keys already, what I suggest is you go to the notebook, and this cell, once you execute it, it may ask you what environment you want, and these types of things. You may need to install, and I did this while executing the cells earlier actually, while talking through it. The kernel, the environment you want is called experiments in AI. So that should pop up as an option, but when I run this cell, I'm actually gonna click run all. What you'll see is that in the top bar, can everyone see it says, please enter your replicate API key. So this is what getPass does, essentially. So now I'm gonna copy that API key and enter my replicate one, and then it says, please enter your Groq API key. So I go back to Groq Cloud.
That same is in the models everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really the first code cell. It's under the section get our API keys in our environment. And the other thing I'll get you to do is, this is for the app that will run later, so we'll need these keys for the app. You'll see there's, in multimodal app directory, you'll see there's a .streamlit subdirectory, and there's a secrets.toml file there. So this is essentially Streamlit's custom version of your .env or wherever you store your secrets, right? So if you go in there, you'll see you can, I think I've got Hugging Face, Groq, Replicate, and OpenAI. You can delete the Hugging Face and OpenAI and just put the Groq API key and a Replicate API token. For anyone watching afterwards, don't steal my tokens, they will have already been deprecated anyway. So, and just make sure to encode them as strings as well. Has anybody not been able to get a Groq API token? That's fantastic. You have not? Okay. Mike, would you mind coming in? Or have you tried and not been able to? Or?
I'm just not keeping up, so.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, Mike can help at any point if you, yeah. Has anybody not got a replicate?
Yeah, same
Okay, cool. Well, why don't we, I do appreciate maybe we're moving slightly quickly, so why don't we take a few more minutes to make sure everyone's good, and then... So did you go to bit.ly/PyData? Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, so this is for everyone who, and I struggle with this as well. The place you go is you click on your username up there and API tokens. Yep. You can't imagine how many times that's happened to me as well. Do we have any questions while we're just getting everyone set up?
No.
I noticed the notebook asked about a kernel and installing some stuff.
Yeah.
So let me
Yeah, so can you help me talk this through? So as I said, when you try to execute a cell, it should ask you to, and this is something I did earlier, I'm sorry. It should ask you to install Jupyter or IPyKernel or something along those lines. So you'll want to install whatever it suggests. Is that your experience, Mike?
Yeah.
And then after that's installed, and you try to execute a cell again, it will say which environment do you want, and it will drop down, and you should choose a Jupyter environment, and it should be experiments in AI or something along those lines.
And they'll start creating data.
So, what's your name? Francisco. Francisco had a fantastic question. He's like, what about the security of these keys? I've just put them into GitHub, and like, does Microsoft, does Satya like have my keys now? Or that wasn't Francisco's question, but by the way, but it's pretty much the same. And it's a very good question. And so the answer is yes, your key is like somehow in like GitHub, Microsoft space now. So the way to deal with that is we don't want anyone to have our keys for too long. So after this workshop, what I want you to do is go to your key and disable the token, okay? So that means this key won't be functional anymore, and you won't be charged for it. Although you're not being charged for it because presumably no one's put in credit card information to either of these. The other thing is like, big up to GitHub and Microsoft for the Codespace stuff. The fact that each of us gets like a certain free amount of compute on Codespaces to do stuff like this is great. I mean, they've got business incentives to get people to use this type of stuff, but they don't have to do this in particular. I think that's super cool. So we'll wait one more minute and then we'll jump in. Okay, everyone. Well, I'd love to keep on keeping on. Now it comes to do some what I think is really fun fun stuff and very playful and creative. Where we're going to start with, you will have noticed in the app that I showed at the start, there's some speech generation. There's also speech to text and these types of things. But if you go to replicate.com, pardon me, and so what I did here was I went to explore. You don't actually have to do this right now. But I clicked on generate speech just to see what's up and what models are there, right? And we can see we've got realistic voice cloning, not scary at all. We've got, text to speech here. We've got Sonobar, which is actually quite fascinating. That's the one I was using for this, the last iteration of this workshop. But you can jump in and play around with amazing things. And as I said, one of the reasons I use Bark is because it's really good for expressive speech. One of the challenges I had with it earlier this week that I didn't have last time I ran a similar workshop was the time it took to generate speech. And I actually, when corresponding with Replicate about it, my understanding is that it's not as popular a model now. A lot of people are using F5, which we'll be using. So that when you ping an API like this, there's a cold start problem, essentially, whereby they spin up the model for you to use, whereas the F5 model is already spun up, so you can ping it almost immediately. That's kind of where we got to there. I do want you to go to this cell and execute it, but change the generated text, okay? So I've made it Captain Hugo on duty, on duty, as we say in the King's English. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be treasonous against my royal sovereign. I don't know if you know, Australia is still a Commonwealth nation, and so we still have a monarch. We have a joke that in Australia that England will become a republic before Australia does, which may well be true. Who knows? But what I want you to do is change this line of code. And I don't want to go too much into what we're doing in the code here. Essentially, what I want to tell you is we're importing Replicate, which we want to. We're creating a client and passing it the API token. Then we're running the client, telling it the model, and then giving it some inputs. And this is actually voice cloning. So there is a reference file here. I don't really want to go into too much of these things. These are the type, because we're using a variety of models. They each have their own quirks, different parameters, that type of stuff. And those aren't kind of the meatiest, most interesting things for this workshop. Very happy to answer questions about them throughout or afterwards. But what we'll see is that it outputs a link to the audio file it generated. When I click on that link, it will download it. And now if I go to downloads, we'll hear, whoa.
Captain Hugo on duty.
Okay, Captain Hugo on duty. And as I said, this actually took just over a minute to generate that. Which, I mean, if we're building a production app, that's far too long, as far as I'm concerned. So maybe we want to self-host a model in order to decrease latency or something along those lines, depending on the purpose. But I'll actually give everyone a minute to just try and execute that themselves and see whether they get something. What's that? So that means you don't have and this is my bad, have the environment in the notebook. So Mike, would you help our friend? He gets no module name replicate, which means we're not in the correct environment.
So is it using that reference audio for very that text as like a
Exactly. So we had a great question. What happens with the reference audio? We're actually doing voice cloning of the voice in that audio.
yeah.
So
That funny little so you could text to yourself.
exactly. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a great party trick.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
Yes.
So we had a question up back, I think.
Yeah, I just tried to, it's not seeing the keys.
Okay. Mike can come and give you a hand in a minute. Ah, you're having Firefox issues.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, I think if you, I can't remember what there is, oh, I get no, this one. If you click on this shield, there might, because I disabled a few things to make sure it worked in Fire, because I use Firefox as well, as you see. It's actually a good question. I thought I had it enhanced, maybe turn enhanced tracking protection off, or just try another browser actually, because this is actually not for me.
I think that if we show this, if you click the drop down, your experiments in AI, I think a lot of people, or some people have the wrong kernel selected.
Mm-hmm.
So if you click this, click there. Oh yeah, and click select another kernel, just to show. Yep.
Yeah, so I won't click because I'm actually running cells now. I don't know.
Should be okay.
Okay.
If you click Python environments,
Yes.
that's yours is just down below. So I think some people have the top one, the Python.
Yes.
1, 2. And so just to reiterate, you want to click experiments in AI.
Yep.
That bottom one.
I don't have, how do you create it?
It's a great question.
Codespaces.
Let me try it with you and then.
Because then it's automatically then it works with the.
So Mike will go around and help you all out, and I apologize that not everyone is able to run this quite yet. We do need to keep on keeping on. So what we've done, can you put up your hand if you are able to create some audio?
It's kind of text. It's a
Are
weird.
able to or not able?
If you are able, yeah. Okay, great. So we've got 70% of people in the room able to do that. We'll make sure everyone else is able to soon. So what if we wanted to start taking LLM generated text and turn that into audio? So this is kind of like our, I suppose, hello world of composability, right? So what we do in the next cell is using Groq, we're using a Llama 3 8B model. And once again, I'm not really going to talk through this code so much. Essentially, we're defining a function that will, when taking in some text, it will respond as the Llama 3 8B model would, the LLM, right? And then what I do is, so we define that function and call it getLLM response. And so then I get it to create a short Pirates sea shanty. And we output that and we see pirate ship, late afternoon. I like how it gives kind of like directions as well. We set sail on the Black Swan's wheel. I was going to read this pirate sea shanty to you, but I don't have to, because what we've done next is the code you just ran to create the speech, the text to speech. We can just take exactly the same code, and instead of passing to gentext Captain Hugo on duty, we just pass to it the song, okay? And so once again, it outputs a URL, and we'll see, let's have a listen to that.
Pirate ship, late afternoon, anchor dropping, the first one. Oh, we set sail on the Black Swan's wheel, bound for adventure. Or so we would feel with rum in our bellies and wind in our hair. We'll sing and we'll shout and show we care. And chorus.
A chorus.
Eco, me hearties, let the anchors go. Me hearties, we'll ride the ocean's flow.
Okay, that's enough out of you. So the proof of principle remains, whether we like that particular song or the way it's delivered. The proof of concept remains, whereby we can chain an LLM response essentially to another model in order to get text to speech. What's your name? I'm sorry. Yep. As Darcy pointed out before, we're using a reference audio here in order to create the song in that voice. You could put in your own voice and create that song being sung by you, okay? Now this was all text to speech, right? What if we wanted to do text to music? And Yeah, no, let's hear it.
Go on duty.
Great, that's what I came here for. Yeah, well, yeah, no, but you should change it to your own name as well. No, what I came here is to make sure that you're becoming equipped with the tools to build this type of stuff. So that's really exciting to hear your laptop's almost in chorus. What if we wanted to create some form of music? Let's have a look on Replicate to see generate music. So there are a whole bunch of cool models to do this. We're using Music Gen today, but what we've got, the prompt here is horns and drums, major G melodies that sound triumphant, cinematic, leading up to a crescendo that resolves in a ninth harmonic. I don't know enough about music theory to know whether this will... Okay, so that's pretty interesting. And notice that it actually opened in the browser and didn't save it locally as a file. You can do either, and my computer, my browser is frozen. Whoa. Uh-oh. Yeah. The code space freaked out for a second. We are kind of giving it a bit of a workout, to be honest. Great, and we can hear someone creating a similar form of music. Now, I don't know enough to know whether that resolved in a ninth harmonic, but what I do know is it did sound like horns and drums. There was triumphant cinematic stuff. So we were able to create something along the lines of what we wanted from this prompt using Music Gen, which I think is pretty interesting. I do think there's a big challenge in the space that if there's an image I want to create or music I want to create, I have an idea in my head of what it will be. And usually what's generated is very far from that. But the ability to iterate on these things and quote unquote prompt engineer is something that's becoming more and more prevalent. Question?
Regarding the text-to-speech model, I tried it with another language and it didn't work very well. So there are text model-to-speech which are specifically was English specific and I could select another one that supports other languages.
It's a good question. How did you change the language?
I found an open source data set with snippets of audio, and I changed the red text and the red audio, so I can hear the voice in the other language, but I can hear that it's not speaking Italian, speaking like that.
Yeah, interesting. There may actually be, we need to look into the details of the model, which I'd encourage you to do. There may actually be arguments which allow you to specify language or...
it should be, you mean maybe in the...
Yeah. You may be able to... Yeah. Exactly.
Not F5.
Yeah. Oh no, it may still be F5, but there may actually, so we've got reference text, there may be something called language or something you can change there. So, so in order to play around with this Music Gen model, and I really encourage you to change the prompts and see what you come up with. I was like, what about we try ancient trip hop with throat singing? I was trying to give it a workout. And
Hugo on duty.
we get. I mean, I can't hear the throat singing, but there is like a trip-hoppy, slightly ancient vibe to it, right? So to speak. So this is just to give a sense of, I suppose, the flexibility and versatility of such models. And then I did one with Refusion, which is a model I really dig, and I tried West African desert blues. And for those who haven't heard much like Malian or Senegalese like desert blues stuff, it's some of the most beautiful music out there in my opinion. It doesn't sound like this though. This is kind of bluesy, right? There's a slight desert vibe, but it isn't quite what I asked for. Nonetheless, I think we're seeing interesting things. So we just have to hard code all of these things, right? So let's say we wanted to kind of develop a more robust system where we can have one prompt and send it to many models, for example. So once again, I've chosen one here, which, I chose it because I'm trying to give the models a bit of a workout to see how expressive they can be. I chose the Waffle House is really messing up the pancakes and bacon tonight. Holy moly, and there's anarchist jazz also. So let's have a look at the image that it generated. Well, we definitely got like some Waffle House, some bacon, those types of things. We got a pretty interesting area. That cup of joe's looking pretty good at the moment as well, right? So that's cool. And the way we did that, we used this Lightning Hades model. Once again, I don't want to go too much into the details of these models or the arguments. This was the default, where essentially all I had to give it was this message. If I then want to create audio from the same message, all I do is do it as we did before. And what we see here is
The Waffle House is really messing up the pancakes and bacon tonight. Aloe, O'Malley, and there's anarchist jazz also.
okay. So if I wanted then to do some music as well, I can literally just pass that to the music model we used before. Wow. Yeah. So once again, I'm overworking my browser a bit. So here we get, and I just wanted to give a sense. I mean, this is one of the ideas behind the app that I showed you at the start and we built for this workshop. But, you know, if we created a movie, we could add this music to it. And we could also add this.
The Waffle House is really messing up the pancakes and bacon tonight. Aloe,
I mean, it's pretty abstract.
Anarchist jazz also.
Right? But the premise that we can combine all these models to create something interesting and then iterate on it is incredibly important. So we've done all of that. Actually, maybe I'll stop there and just for a minute or two and see if there are any questions. Please, Darcy.
I have a question about Groq to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
So is it just an API that it's gonna host whatever model we tell it? And so then we send it the prompt and it returns back the response so that it saves us from downloading the model ourselves and.
Exactly.
You know, so, and that's it. That's what's happening. Okay.
That's what's happening in Groq, and that's a
Yeah.
great question. So and that's what's happening in Replicate as well.
Okay, right.
So let's just, and both services there are platforms that offer a lot of different things, but essentially, you're absolutely right. So if we have a look at Groq, it has all of these models that we can ping as an API essentially. And what I'll do as well is take us back to this image where if we have an open source foundation model, a lot of the time that will be self-hosted. So we've got that on some server, we ping, we've got infrastructure engineers and data engineers or whoever who are responsible for maintaining it, these types of things. I honestly think the maintenance costs of self-hosting models in terms of headcount is one of the biggest challenges a lot of smaller organizations will face. So that's why having these AI vendor APIs where you can just literally send the prompt to the model, they host it, and then they send the result.
So they're making money, they're not money of their own, they're not like ChatGPT because they don't have their own model, but they're making money by just hosting a bunch of open source models. So
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly. Yep. And so, once again, I did mention Hugging Face, which is another fantastic solution for a lot of these things. If you go to huggingface.co and go to models, and anything we've done today, you can switch out models from any of these providers. The reason I didn't choose Hugging Face is that actually it isn't always obvious to me which Hugging Face models are free, which are not. This is no beef with Hugging Face per se, but certain things have changed with their free tier. So using Groq and Replicate, I can be guaranteed that none of you need to put in credit card information into. But as you see, like, you know, if you want to do multimodal, if you want to do, you know, document question answer, let's check out the models that are there at the moment, right? If you wanted to do text summarization, yeah, Facebook's BART model. Awesome. And then what you can do is, There's an inference API, which is serverless, so that's really pinging it the way we've been doing. You can also set up your own inference endpoint. You can deploy it on SageMaker, Azure, deploy it as a Gradio app, these types of things, which is super cool. And you know, a lot of community interaction and these types of things on Hugging Face as well. So I've shown you Replicate, but Hugging Face is a wonderful space to be doing this. Groq has a bunch of models and so on. So great question, Darcy. Any other questions? Please.
I guess in Replicate, where do you differentiate between Groq?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So yeah, currently the models Groq has are a lot of chat models and then speech to text. Yeah, and a lot of them you can find on Replicate as well. But I did want to introduce you to the idea of using different APIs as well. Exactly. Cool question. So that now we've done all of this. Let's say we wanted to do many models at once, potentially in parallel. So we're not going to quite do them in parallel yet. When we have the app, we will. But what we have here is essentially, we've used these models several times. If you use the same code several times, you probably should turn it into a function, right? So we're creating some utility functions to, this one is to generate an image. Then this one, we're not using Sunobark anymore, so I've commented that out. Then we're going to generate music. And then, just a sec, yeah, I still do use this Sunobark model, but we're not going to actually use it. Then we, the F5 one, which is the speech generation that we've been playing around with. So once you execute all of that, that will define the utility functions. And what you can do now is choose any message and then pipe it into these three functions and print the output and get the URLs. I've got no idea why I chose Crazy Wild Zombie Party at the Blaring Symphony Orchestra. I think it was probably, once again, to test out, see how flexible these models are and see what they can do. I'm kind of scared to look at this image, but okay. Cool, so we kind of have, that's pretty freaky, isn't it? We have like a zombie party. We don't really have the Blaring Symphony Orchestra yet, but maybe we'll get that in, the next one will be the speech. So let's see.
Crazy Wild Zombie Party at the Blaring Symphony Orchestra.
That's cool. And let's hear what the music is.
Crazy Wild Zombie Party at the Blaring Symphony Orchestra.
Okay. Whenever this opens in a tab, for some reason my Firefox freaks out, so we just have to look at this and listen to this for a bit. I mean, I'm so glad this is being recorded as well. What's that?
Reproducibility.
Oh, that's actually an incredibly important point, reproducibility. And so there are ways to think about this. You'll remember at some point, OpenAI introduced some sort of setting the seed, so you can make sure that you get some form of reproducibility. Different models do this in different ways. Another way to think about this, there is a parameter. Once again, I don't want to go too much into the model details, but you may have encountered a parameter called temperature, which allows you to essentially generate more creative versus less creative solutions. And the lower the temperature is, the more predictable the response will be. That isn't to say it's entirely reproducible, but you're absolutely right. Reproducibility is a huge concern. For that reason, this isn't something we're going to get into a lot today, but the ideas of model monitoring, data monitoring, logging, visibility into what your models are doing is increasingly important. Okay. So we have those, and I did another one just to make sure what we got, and it's the Waffle House. This is very strange, isn't it? There's like some weird perspective thing happening there. This is the anarchist jazz. Not bad. Oh no, I chose punk abstract jazz for this one.
The Waffle House messing it up, for real, with the pancakes and bacon and punk abstract jazz. Yo!
Okay, great. Sorry, once again, my browser is not letting me. It's like a gag that is unintentional every time. I forget every. Okay, so. Let's. Where did this? Oh no. Did my code space die? Oh, it can't. Oh yeah. Okay, everyone. Well, while I just open my code space again, how did everyone go? How successful or unsuccessful have you been? This is such an important question. So what's your name? Junfeng? Junfeng just asked, are there retry parameters or will they always succeed? They will definitely not always succeed. These models can hang for several minutes. So when actually building like production grade software based around these, some of them have their own retry parameters, but you will want to do retries yourself, do timeouts yourself, this type of stuff. And try to catch these types of error modes. I think it's essentially no different to, so a pattern I've seen a lot is kind of developing, like, when building ML-powered software, developing, I suppose, microservice architectures where, let's say, a database is updated daily. Every time new data comes into your database, that will then ping a retraining of a model, which may then ping a prediction flow or these types of things, right? Now, for various reasons, the database connection may break, or all the new data brought in has null values which your model can't deal with, or there's actually no new data and your model actually expects at least one piece of new data. And what you want to do is, with retries, with timeouts, with catches, figure out these failure modes and make your software robust in the sense that irrespective of how or what, or if the data doesn't come in at all, that your software still is functional. And it's no different here. Some of the implementation details are different, but the idea of a model not returning a result, in my mind, is analogous to the idea of your database not being updated. Some of the model APIs deal with this, but I wouldn't trust them. To be very frank, I think I would make sure that I've built into my software stack how to deal with these particular failure modes as well. So the final thing I did here was, I was like, pardon me, we've done, all types of text to speech and text to music and text to image. We haven't done any video yet. So I was like, oh, we should probably do something like that. And so I just went to replicate once again and was like, how do I get some, I'm gonna start having dreams in that voice now, I think. Let's see, text to video, generate videos.
The Waffle House.
Yeah. I love waffles as well. I love diners, actually. We don't have a diner culture in Australia. And booze. So I chose this the Stable Diffusion model, which is quite nice. And so we'll see the same prompt for this model pretty cool. I'm not going to do it right. Yeah, I suppose I will. No, I was actually. So we've created like a little video clip for a Waffle House ad, essentially. I probably wouldn't try to sell this to Waffle House, although you never know. But I think that's pretty fascinating. So what we're going to do now is build the app that I showed at the start. I do want to say before that, the way to think about these types of things are, if you have something in mind, like some sort of speech to image thing you want to build, or something along these lines, or even speech to summarization. So you could actually, today, I mean, I just thought of this, you could create a little app on your phone or on your laptop in a code space, and Codespaces run on iOS as well, so you could actually have a code space open on your phone. The user experience isn't necessarily the best, but let's say you wanted to dictate your daily journal to your phone or laptop, get a summarization, and get your to-do list for the week or something like that. That's something you could do today. And the way I think about that is identify the MVP of what you want to build. In this case, it would be a spoken journal summarization and to-do list app. Break it down into atomic units. Those atomic units would be speech to text, and then several iterations of text to text. So the speech to text would be you speaking to the text, turning that into text, and then text to text would be summarization and maybe to-do list summary or something like that. And then you could, let's say you wanted to receive it as a series of text messages, maybe you'd integrate it with a Twilio API. And if you don't know Twilio, it's essentially, among other things, like a phone messaging API whereby you can set up phone numbers and send messages to them and blah, 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 okay? So, if they're these types of things you want to play around with, what I deeply encourage everyone to do is identify the MVP you want to build, break it down into atomic units, choose a tool for each unit, and then stitch them together. And these are the types of things that we've been doing today, and we'll continue to with this app. I'm just bringing up a couple of notes. I'm not on a dating app. I don't know why I use that as an example. I'm not on TikTok for adults, otherwise known as LinkedIn. So, the other thing is, explore models. I mean, I hope you've got that impression via osmosis throughout this workshop. But I want to say explicitly, go and explore models and play around with them and experiment. It's a wonderful time to be doing these types of things. And so you can go to Replicate or wherever else, but you do have $100 in free credits from Replicate now as well, which is pretty cool. You've just made $100 actually. And as I said, we've got text to text, we've got text to speech, we've got speech to text, we've got image to text, we've got text to video, we've got text to music, we've got text to image, we've got image to image. This isn't even an exhaustive list of the types of things. So I actually think the opportunities are not endless, but there's some sort of like combinatorial explosion of possibilities here, which is pretty darn cool if you ask me, which you didn't, but I'm saying it anyway. So, all that having been said, what I want you to do now is go into, pardon me, into secrets.tonal if you haven't, and put your Replicate and Groq API keys in there. And then, what we have here, essentially are, so can you put your hand up if you have heard of Streamlit? Oh, very cool. Okay, so most people have. If you haven't, that's totally chill. Among other things, it's a way of creating front ends for Python-powered and data-powered applications. I chose Streamlit because I needed something a bit more heavyweight than Gradio, but I do actually very much encourage everyone to check out Gradio, which is Hugging Face. It comes out of Hugging Face, and it allows you in this many lines of code to just give a very basic front end to any app that you're building. And once again, not necessarily for production quality, but in order, if I can build a machine learning model or set up a system and then write 5 lines of code to ship it to a colleague as an MVP with this particular front end, and actually, what I'm going to do, let me get this right. While I'm actually teaching a 3-hour workshop tomorrow and Friday in Austin. If anyone's in Austin wants to come to a generative AI workshop, hit me up as well. I think I've got some free passes, but I'll show you, because I'll show you the Gradio front end there in a second. Let me get this right. I just distracted myself. Great. So once you have your tokens in there, essentially, what I've done, just give me 1 second, I'm just looking at my notes just to make sure I get this right. Yeah, so you'll see under Multimodal app, there are a bunch of files such as API, .py, constants, main, UI, and utils. I do want to say a few things about this, about these. This is the Streamlit app that we're building. The app itself and the front end isn't the most important part. That's why I really don't want to go into too many details. But just to say a few things. API.py, essentially this is the one that handles interactions with external APIs. We have constants, which is to set essentially a bunch of reusable settings and values, such as endpoints, such as certain prompts we want to use, that type of stuff. Main is the main entry point to the app, which essentially orchestrates the flow of the application, including, you'll see some asynchronous behavior. You will have noticed that previously I had a bunch of models working in parallel, and this async behavior allows us to do that. UI.py essentially defines the front end, and then utils, it's a bunch of helper functions that support the main app, essentially. So to get this running, what I want you to do is, do not type what I'm typing yet. So you want to type poetry shell. So that will get us into our poetry environment, which makes sure all our packages are installed. And then you want to cd, go into the directory, multimodal app, and then streamlit, run, main.py, and open in browser, okay? Now, you can choose a variety of different models here. Because we haven't put in OpenAI keys, we don't want to use the OpenAI models, but you can use any of these Groq models. I haven't tested all of them actually, but I definitely know the Llama 3.1 works. And so, Mike, do you want to give me another verbal prompt that?
Yes, so bad. This is, we're generating an image, is that?
Well, okay, great question.
Yeah.
So we're back at the app, we're going to transcribe it, then an LLM, Llama 3 is going to turn it into a little song, and then we're going to generate images, video, and text-to-speech based around both those prompts.
What if, once we go into the dot streamline, what do we do again? I lost that.
Okay, so just going, actually,
Oh, run main dot.
yeah, exactly. So streamlit run main.py. Great.
Oh, that's the kind of funky.
Yep.
Alright, I'm ready.
Yep. Do you want to come up and say it into the?
I would love to.
Can someone take a photo of me and Mike up here as well? Just.
Right now?
Yeah. Miles has got it.
We have this. I do it live. Do you want me saying it?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to click the microphone.
It's
and then
important. They won't see it in the photo, but
Yeah.
they'll know.
I'll be recording.
Yeah. Alright. A pack of badgers gathered on a pirate's ship are drunk, sloppy drunk. I'm talking like incredibly drunk badgers on a pirate ship, having fun, paddling around. Okay, great.
Yeah, great. So.
Alright. A pack of badgers gathered on a pirate's ship are drunk, pirate ship.
Wonderful. So that's what happens when you don't filter what you tell the LLM. So I love the song opens with a hiccup, which is fantastic. Oh, the badgers on the high seas so free, drunk on grog, sloppy as can be. Ooh, their pirate ship's a mess, a sight to see. Slurred, shiver me timbers, Captain Badger's on his knees. So we're going to run all the tasks. So actually, we could create, you can click any of these to create. I'll just generate image for user prompt, and we'll get something. We'll make sure we've got some output here as generating image. That's good, that's what we want. Okay, that's taking longer than I'd like, but that's also cool, because sometimes things take longer than you'd like. More often than not, things take longer than one would like. That's my general statement. This is taking too long though. I don't like it. Okay, I'm actually gonna stop this and run all tasks concurrently. And so while we're running that, do we have any questions? 10-minute warning. I like a warning. It's not like 10-minute markers. It's not a threat yet, but it's a warning. While we're waiting for this to execute, I just want to thank Mike once again for on the spur of the moment getting up and doing these things. Mike and I worked together many years ago in the Empire State Building actually, and it was a time in my life when I needed a new hobby, and I started doing improv in the city, and I just didn't like collaborating with other people at all. So I thought, if I want to do something like improv, but I don't want to have to worry about other people, what is it? So I started doing stand-up comedy. One of the most brutal, like I did it for several years actually, and it was a wild ride, but after work one day, I was going down to do an open mic in the East Village, and I said to Mike, do you want to come down? And he said, sure. He came down and he got up and did 5 minutes at this East Village open mic and had everyone, he'd never done stand-up before, and he was the funniest guy in the room. So
Terrifying.
appreciate you for that as well, man.
I appreciate that what you did now was stand up, just distracting us as the stream that runs,
Absolutely. I mean, I could have told many stories about AI as well, but I thought, why not, engage on a more human level. Can I tell people what your material was?
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, so Michael, your mother is Caucasian,
Yeah.
and your father is
Chinese.
And he did a routine that he got off the cuff about his white mother being kind of racist to him, about being a half Chinese man. Yeah, it was wonderful and complex, and I didn't do it justice in that statement, but you can just imagine in a dingy East Village cellar.
And if my mom's watching this, I don't think you're racist, Mom. Just for the record.
He doesn't think you're racist.
As far as I know.
Yeah. So this is still running. This is taking, I'm glad I did the demo at the start, because this is taking longer than it did previously, and that may be because the Codespace is getting a workout and these types of things. We do have 5 minutes left, so while this is running, I would really love you all to, I created a form that you can get to bit.ly/PyData-feedback. It's a 5-minute survey that essentially the intention is to, I want to teach these types of things ongoing, and I just love as much feedback as possible. So if you wouldn't mind filling that out as we wrap up, that would definitely help me a great deal. And 5-minute warning, great. And what I do want to show you as well. I'm not going to put in my keys, but essentially, this is the other workshop I'm teaching this week, and the reason I'm showing you this is that I did want to show you what a Gradio front end looks like. And once again, it opens in Codespaces really nicely. So what I've done in this app essentially is it's a quick kind of RAG, retrieval augmented generation app, which allows you to drag and drop a PDF, then chat with an LLM about the PDF there. You can see this is built with Gradio. The reason I wanted to show you this is the only lines of code I needed to get this Gradio interface up is here, right? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 7 lines of code, right? Which allow me to spin up something like this. Once again, I wouldn't do this for production yet, but like, let's say I'm working with Mike on something and I just want to ship him a quick front end in order to play around with this type of stuff. It's incredibly powerful. And I do think it's an open source tool, part of the Hugging Face ecosystem. Once again, for the purposes of this workshop, I chose a Streamlit app because I could do a bit more beefier stuff and create something a bit heavier with it. But I very much recommend that to everyone. And if you do want to check out this repository, it's under my GitHub. AI for Software and Engineers is the workshop where we're teaching at it's called the MLOps World and Generative AI World Conference. So hit me up on LinkedIn if you're going to be in Austin and you want a free ticket or something along those lines. Okay, great, we got it. Whew. Uh-oh, bad naughty badgers.
All right. A pack of badgers gathered on a pirate ship are drunk, sloppy drunk. I'm talking like incredibly drunk badgers on a pirate ship.
Great, and yeah, they definitely are. And of course, you could create longer videos than this. The reason I did this was in the spirit of getting it done quickly. Oh, look at these piratey badgers. Great, and then you have this. Whoa, that's hectic.
Hiccup. Oh, badgers on the high seas, so free, drunk on grog, sloppy as can be kiss a bird. Oh, their pirate ship's a mess. A sight to see, a slurred shiver me timbers. Captain Badger's on his knees.
Fascinating stuff. What are your thoughts, Mike, on the outcome? Hot or not? Yeah. Great, cool. Look, everyone, we've got two minutes left. I'd love to answer any questions you all might have. I'd love to answer any questions, but I'm just going to keep talking. But I do want to encourage you to play around with this. Please do start a repository, share it with friends, and let me know on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm Hugo Bowne, HUGOBOWNE for Edward. My accent makes E sound like A sometimes. But let me know what you play around with, what models you find interesting, what you build. Feel free to raise issues on the GitHub repository as well. But this is all in the spirit of building more together. So I'd love to know what you get out of this and what you build afterwards. So do we have any questions to wrap up? That's either a very good thing or a very bad thing. I'll assume the former. And once again, I'd love to thank you all for your engagement and attention and being here Times Square on Wednesday, the 6th of November, 2024 at 9 a.m. Yeah, cool. All right, thank you, everyone.